The morning sun hung low over the small town of Ridgehaven, casting a pale golden wash across its cracked sidewalks and weathered storefronts, but even the brightness of day couldn't erase the heaviness in Kieran Holt's chest. He stood outside the cluttered little auto shop where he worked part-time, his hands trembling slightly as he locked the roll-up gate into place. Today felt heavier than most days. Maybe it was the overdue rent notice sitting in his back pocket. Maybe it was the school form his 8-year-old son, Rowan, had left on the kitchen counter, the one requiring a field trip fee Kieran wasn't sure he could afford. Or maybe it was simply exhaustion, the kind that builds slowly inside a person who has been fighting too long without a break. Whatever the cause, Kieran felt it deep in his bones, a weight he feared might finally be too much. But he buttoned his faded work shirt anyway, inhaled slowly, and told himself he had no choice but to keep going. Because that's what single fathers do, they keep moving even when their legs want to give out. If you believe kindness and second chances can change a life, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kind Heartbeat. It truly helps stories like this reach more hearts. Kieran was 34 but felt closer to 50. Life had carved lines along his face far earlier than it should have. Since losing his wife Marina to a sudden illness 5 years earlier, he had been raising Rowan alone while juggling any job he could find. Some weeks he repaired cars at the shop, other weeks he delivered groceries or painted fences. He had once dreamed of becoming a certified mechanic and owning his own garage someday, but dreams became distant when bills, loneliness, and grief pulled at him day after day. Still, he reminded himself that Rowan was worth every sacrifice, every hardship, every sleepless night spent counting bills instead of stars. The auto shop buzzed with the familiar rhythm of clanking tools and hissing air compressors as he began his shift. Around mid-morning, as he wiped grease from his hands, he heard the sputtering cough of an engine barely holding itself together. A silver SUV coasted unevenly into the parking lot before coming to a rough stop. From the driver's seat emerged a woman in her early 40s, well-dressed, graceful, but clearly distressed. She pressed a hand to her forehead as if fighting back frustration. Kieran noticed the fatigue in her eyes, the kind that came from something deeper than car trouble. But he also recognized that life had its way of pushing people to the edge. He walked toward the vehicle, trying to offer a reassuring nod, though reassurance rarely felt natural to him anymore. The woman introduced herself as Adrienne Vale, a traveler passing through town for a conference. Her car, she explained with an exasperated sigh, had stalled multiple times on the highway. She desperately needed it fixed by afternoon. Though the shop was fully booked, and though he knew he'd probably be scolded by the supervisor for taking on extra work, something inside him nudged him to help. Maybe because she reminded him of the people he wished had been there during his own worst days. Maybe because kindness wasn't something he could ever turn away from, no matter how hard his life had become. But he told her he would take a look under the hood. He quickly discovered multiple issues: faulty wiring, worn-out plugs, and a corroded battery terminal. The job would take hours. Adrienne watched him with gratitude glowing quietly behind her exhausted expression. She paced in the sunlight, making occasional urgent phone calls, the kind filled with rushed explanations and apologies. From her tone, Kieran could sense she wasn't someone used to asking for help, yet life had backed her into a corner where she needed it. As he worked, he noticed the patch on her sleeve with the logo of a large humanitarian foundation. He wondered who she was and why someone who seemed so composed and successful looked as though she was moments away from unraveling. Yet he didn't ask for details. People carried stories behind their eyes, most of them far too heavy to explain to strangers. By early afternoon, sweat clung to Kieran's forehead as he tightened the final bolts and wiped grease from his battered knuckles. He had managed to get the SUV running smoother than it had in months. When Adrienne returned from pacing anxiously near the sidewalk, he explained that he had only charged her for the cost of a few replaced parts, nothing extra, even though the labor should have cost far more. She blinked in surprise, insisting he take more money, but he nervously shook his head and told her it was fine. His voice quivered, not because of her reaction, but because he knew exactly how it felt to be stranded with too many problems and too little help. She thanked him sincerely, her voice warming with genuine relief. Then, before driving off, she paused at her window. She gazed at him a moment longer, as though searching for something unspoken. With a soft breath, she said she hoped life would repay him for his kindness. Kieran just shrugged silently, offering a faint, tired smile. Life rarely repaid him, but that never stopped him from doing what he felt was right. What Kieran didn't know was that his entire world was about to shift. The next morning, a Saturday, he was home with Rowan in their tiny 2-room apartment at the edge of town. The sunlight eeped through thin curtains and settled warmly on the threadbare carpet where Rowan played with his small collection of toy cars, his prized treasures. Kieran cherished these mornings, even though his mind buzzed anxiously with unpaid bills and the broken water heater that had decided at the worst time to stop working. Still, he tried to stay present, watching his son laugh softly to himself as he lined the toy cars in perfect formation. Moments like this reminded him why he fought so hard. A sudden knock on the door jolted him from his thoughts. It was early, too early for visitors, and Kieran's stomach tightened. He opened the door hesitantly, expecting perhaps a neighbor or a maintenance request. Instead, he froze as the woman from the previous day, Adrienne Vale, stood before him. But this time she wasn't distressed or hurried. She carried a calm, gentle resolve, as though she had made a decision overnight she was now certain about. Kieran blinked, wondering if he was still half asleep. She offered a polite smile before asking if she could come inside for a moment. Though surprised, he stepped aside, allowing her into the small living room. She glanced around the humble apartment, taking in the outdated furniture, the peeling paint, the obvious signs of a life held together with too many sacrifices. Adrienne explained that after leaving the shop yesterday, she couldn't stop thinking about him, about the unexpected kindness he offered despite clearly facing struggles of his own. She mentioned how rare it was for someone to give without expecting something in return. And then she said something that left Kieran breathless. She was not just passing through for a conference. She was in charge of a national program her foundation ran, one dedicated to helping skilled but under-resourced individuals receive training, certification, and job placement in specialized trades. Mechanics was one of the primary fields they supported. She told him that after meeting him, she had contacted her team late last night. She wanted to nominate him for one of their full sponsorship programs.